I don't have a basement drain, so if I were to have a water pipe rupture, my basement would fill with water, and I think that's just something that happens.
You don't have a sump either?
I don't have a sump either.
Yeah. You have a shop vac.
I have a shop vac.
And a young son who is ready to man it. Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. You're listening to Matt Milham.
Hello.
Patrick McComb.
Good morning.
And me, Justin Fink. All right, how do you get in touch with us? FHBpodcast@taunton.com. That's TAUNTON.com. You guys are sending in awesome questions. Today's show will be proof of that. You can also read up on the show notes and check out any of the links for things that we talked about on this show by going to finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Today we have a couple of videos, or we have one video and we have some other visuals, and so you will be able to go to that address and check those out there. I believe that is all the housekeeping. How's everyone feeling today?
We got some great questions. I can't wait.
I know these are tough, so I think we should probably just dive in because I'm foreseeing some conversation. I'm anticipating.
They're good questions.
I'm anticipating. My spider sense is tingling here. Let me pull up the first one here. Please hold. This one is about a pretty much a worst case repair situation.
Oh man.
Brent writes into us, Fine Home Building fellas. After removing some old cellulose insulation between the floor joists and the basement, I'm guessing that means the ceiling joists. Mm-hmm. My wife and I stumbled upon some pretty significant termite damage to our rim joist. As you can see in the pictures I've attached, this damage spans roughly 8 foot and also about 2 feet in another separate area. The termite issue has been resolved. However, I would like to repair/replace the rim joist that is severely damaged, and I was interested to hear how you guys might tackle this issue. And I'm reading this going, all right, we're going to talk about replacing this thing from the outside, no problem. Access to it from the outside isn't really an option due to the fact that this damage takes place behind concrete steps. All right.
And brick.
The hole you can see in the picture is access right under the front steps. Surprisingly, there's minimal damage to the floor joist. However, there are areas of significant damage to the sill plate. I'm guessing that needs to be replaced as well. Anyway, I'd be very interested to hear how you guys might repair this and what advice you would have for these repairs. Brent, I'm also very interested to hear how we're going to repair this. So obviously the issue here, so let's talk about the function of those parts. And so people may not know all the different parts. On top of the concrete wall in your basement, you have a plate, and that plate is on the flat.
Except it doesn't look like he has one, right? I think in older homes, oftentimes the joists are put right on.
I think he does have one. He mentioned the sill plate. Yeah. You might not be able to see it in this photo, but unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, he mentioned it, but
you're not seeing it either?
I couldn't really tell what I was looking at because it almost looks like it almost looks like that rim and the joists are sitting
right
on concrete.
On the block wall.
All right. Yeah. Well, in most cases, you have a sill plate that sits on top of the concrete wall, and
it should be pressure treated, which would prevent the termites from tunneling into the band joist.
Right. And then the band joist, rim joist, it's called a couple different things. That is extending up from the sill plate. It rests on the sill plate, and it attaches to the end of all the floor joists to keep them from rolling. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. It keeps the floor joists from rolling one side or the other. So the worry here being, without a sill plate that's in good shape, the floor joist will sink and will sag, and your floor and walls and everything above it will have problems. The problem without a rim joist is that the floor joists are at greater risk of rolling without having any support to keep them from rolling. Although
the flooring also helps.
There's a lot of things that help, but houses are very redundant.
Very.
I'm not saying you shouldn't fix this, but I think that the sill plate would be the first thing you would notice, because that's going to crush pretty quick if it starts. If it's all eaten away, it's not going to be able to carry any weight, and that's when your floor joists are going to probably drop. And I think it's safe to say you would notice that.
Yeah, if you got any doors or windows over that, they're gonna.
And he has a front door over it.
Be hard to open and close.
Yeah, I'm curious if the door's pinching or what. Did you? And so if you were to replace the sill plate and or rim joist from the outside, it would just be simply a matter of peeling back the siding.
temporarily supporting the floor system.
Well, so you could just cut through the rim joist and remove that. You know, use a short reciprocating saw blade, careful that you're not penetrating too far. But if you have access from the inside, you can also go in the basement and look, say, you know, do I have any wires in the way? Is there anything I have to worry about hitting? And if it's all clear, then you can do it from the outside and really not be too worried about the length of the blade.
Yeah.
Cut that rim joist out, get it out of the way. The method I really like for supporting those floor joists is opposing wedges. So you place opposing wedges right on that top of that concrete wall and you hammer them together and it will take the load off of the sill plate so you can cut it and slip it out. And we have a great article on that by Mike Girton that we can share. Of course, all of this is from the outside.
Right.
And so it gets a lot harder from the inside, I think.
Yeah. I don't know that you can slip a new rim board in from the inside. You're basically just going to have to block.
Maybe you could do it from the top side if you temporarily supported the exterior, but you'd have to move some studs out of the way, and I think you'd want to do it in small sections.
So I started going down that path of doing it from the top. That was my first thought. And there's a photo included in here. I'm going to see if I can pull out which one it is. Jeff, it's 1768. It's that one. This, from what I can tell, is a look at, you know how like a door jamb has a, you know, the side of the jamb extends below the sill plate on the bottom. So it has like horns on the bottom usually, right? And it looks like it's been notched into the rim joist. Mm-hmm. Like
is that the photo we have right there?
Is that what you're reading from this photo? Because I don't know what's going on there. Seeing here.
I kind of think that it was a patch in the subfloor.
But what is that vertical piece?
It
looks like a door jamb with a stop that is extending through the subfloor and has been the rim joist has been notched away for that jamb to go into it.
I see that. I don't really know what's going on there. Instead of cutting off the bottom
of the door, they just notched the floor.
Yeah. No, and I think that's
or it's crushing. Like, is that termite damage and it's sinking into the floor?
It could also be a nailer for baseboard. You know.
Because it's the same on both sides.
And
I
it's
think
different. It's a different vintage than the rest of the floor system.
Yeah, you're right. It's bright white wood compared to everything else looking old. Yeah, you're right. It's on the other side too. Yeah, 1766, Jeff. That image shows it on both sides.
And that one definitely looks like it was overcut.
That's a notch, yeah. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe somebody built a door or something. But anyway, so that's scary also. You can see right through the rim joist. Just looking right at the backside of that felt paper.
What's our email writer's name?
Brent.
If I were Brent, I would be really tempted to not even mess with this. I think I would cut some PT blocking to prevent the joist rolling that you talk about and the crushing. And as far as trying to jam that in there, I don't know if I would really go to the trouble. I think I'd want to air seal the holes.
As far as jamming what in there?
So cut some short pieces of blocking to fit between the joists from the inside. It's going to solve that crushing and rolling problem that would be problematic if you didn't have a band joist.
And you'd push it all the way up against the interior face of the existing failing rim joist. I thought the exact same thing. I mean,
you could really over-engineer this.
The purpose of that rim joist is to keep the joist from rolling, and obviously to seal from the outside. You know, and the sheathing should come down and be attached to it, and that helps with the whole shear, the whole structure of the house. But there's nothing to say you can't put blocking between this and get the same result. And if there was finishes attached to this rim joist on the outside that were going to then start to fall off the house essentially because it's rotting or, because it's damaged, then, I get the concern.
I get the concern too. And I would be potentially more concerned about where's the water coming from that's contributing to this. Because termites cannot live in dry wood.
Concrete steps.
Steps.
We hear it over and over again on this show. Nobody knows how to do that right.
So
it's really,
it might be some flashing details that would help prevent the water from getting behind there and not drying.
Right.
The brick veneer is also a problem too because that's seldom detailed correctly where there are weep holes and a good weather-resistant barrier behind there and an airspace.
So do you think you could, when it comes to the brick and what you're talking about, is there's usually an airspace, drainage space behind the brick, or there's supposed to be, and then at the bottom there's weep holes, and sometimes it's like wooden dowels, sometimes it's there's all sorts of different things. Sometimes it's a plastic vent.
Holes, yeah.
Have you ever heard of somebody retrofitting those? Like, hey, my wall has no ventilation at the bottom, so I'm going to take a masonry bit and drill holes every 12 inches through that
I'd love to
bottom
meet
course.
that person who was motivated enough to do that.
But I mean, if you knew enough about how it was supposed to work and you looked at your brick wall and said, mine doesn't have that, you could retrofit it, right?
I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Patrick. I mean, Brent talks about the termite problem has been solved. He didn't talk about the water problem's been solved.
That's the water problem is part of the termite problem.
Yeah. You don't have a termite problem first. You have a water problem first. And it's that concrete stoop. So then that leads me to my next thought of, if solving that problem requires moving those steps, then I would tackle this from the outside.
Totally.
And I would fix it. If those steps are staying in place and they just need to be flashed properly with the house to keep them from getting wet back there, then I would do what Patrick's talking about with the blocking from the inside. You thinking the same thing, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, and then it's just like the order of installation of getting that stuff in there so that you can fasten it properly and, just do every other one
and I would
nail those and then.
Yeah. Well, why don't you talk about the process for that? Because that's a smart way that a lot of people don't know about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because you've got these bays, if you just went, one after the other, you'd have a hard time attaching, the one end because it would be, basically you wouldn't be able to access it with a nail.
Right.
So just do every other one first and then go back and you can toenail the every other one in between them.
Or you also can go, through nail into the end of one, and then toenail through nail through nail in order to do the same thing continuously across.
Yep.
It's going to be hard to nail in those spaces, as we all know. So Simpson L brackets are also a viable option. You fasten one side to the side of the joist and the other side to your piece of blocking in between.
I would also not have any problem using construction screws here.
Totally.
Something like
that's a given.
Something that's like a number 10 screw,
2.5 inches or 3 inches long.
Yeah, exactly. Coated with something because you're going into PT. So exterior deck framing screws are good. If you're going to use nails, I would spend the $40 or $50 for a palm nailer. They're so cheap.
Oh yeah.
If you have a compressor, and spend the other $5 on ear protection because you're going to need it.
Yeah. I was going to say.
How concerned would you guys be about reinforcing these joists?
I would definitely do some poking with an awl or a sharpened Phillips screwdriver or whatever, and just make sure they're not too soft and rotted, because that could be a problem.
It wouldn't be too much though to
sister
something on. I mean, right before you put the blocking in, just any ones that are in question, put a tight wave of construction adhesive on the side of the joist, fasten on a new sister joist onto it, and that doesn't necessarily have to be PT, but it could be. I mean, for peace of mind. And then slide the blocking in after. And that way it just eliminates that worry, because you've given yourself a sturdy extension to the possibly compromised joist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a cool one. So can we circle back to the mud sill thing, the sill plate? I'm looking at image 1773. Is that a sill plate? It looks like it's just a shim or something.
I see the Romex cable fastened there, and I don't know how you would fasten it there without there being a mud sill. So
I mean, he said sill plate.
Yeah.
We can't quite see it in the photos, but we'll assume it's there.
I certainly run into homes that don't have one.
Yeah.
Especially things like built in the 20s and 30s, like kind of between timber framing and stick framing.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it doesn't have one, I wouldn't go try and add one.
I think you got to jack the house and get that thing in there.
Yeah, shoot. Well, we've heard it. We've heard it done.
Well, and then how would you do that? I would probably just block in between those joists if you can. Get like a 6x6
and jack
under there and jack it. Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't?
You're going to have to stretch that brick on the outside,
if you have to get it out, that's the thing. I mean, just enough to get that a little bit of weight off of it. Well, I wouldn't say elevated necessarily.
But why? Like, what? Without having a sill plate there, what's the downside? I mean, I understand from a building point of view, it makes sense, because now as a builder, I can level that mud sill and that sill plate, and it makes the rest of my build easy. It's the last thing that I really need to get dead flat, and then I can just frame my floor and not worry about it. Mm-hmm. It does provide you the connection from concrete to wood framing.
There's a more esoteric reason too. The concrete block are going to transpire water through their holes in the top. And if you have a plate on there, it stops that movement, right? And stops that cycle of water vapor coming into your basement. So that's another reason.
Across the whole top of the foundation?
The whole top of the foundation.
Do you typically do that? I've only ever seen guys do a 2x4 or 2x6.
I think it's much wiser to close off those cells to stop the...
Oh, for block, you're saying?
Yes, for block.
Yeah.
For concrete, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. I never even thought about that. I don't see a lot of block in the stuff that I'm working on typically, but it makes sense. But I have seen in old rubble foundation basements at least one situation where somebody did jack up the joists, extend the peel and stick or whatever the membrane was that they're using for their basement wall up and under the plate, and then they lowered it back down again so that they had a continuous seal. I guess now that I'm saying it, they had a plate, but they didn't have what any sort of bond break between the wood and the concrete. Yeah, some kind of insane... Concrete has an insane ability to wick water upwards. I forget what the number is, but, obviously trees do too. I mean, we have trees. What are redwood trees? How tall are they?
Hundreds of feet.
Yeah, I mean, they can... And that water's being wicked up through the wood, hundreds of feet. But concrete is like miles or something insane that it can wick water upwards. So people would think that, I don't need to worry about that sill seal. Who cares? You think it can't move 8 feet? Get real.
And it's year round because the soil always has moisture in it. It's just constant.
Yeah, it's a never ending cycle where it's moving from wet to dry.
Yes,
it's going to try to. If you give it a place to go, it's going to do it.
Yep.
Anyway, next up from Jonathan, we have a video question. Jonathan writes, "I love the podcast. Here's a video question about the sealing of a sump basin. Sealing of sump basin caps by radon pump installers. Lots of my local friends have this same problem, but don't know it." And he also goes on to point out, "I don't mention it in the video, but the basement drain is cracked and clogged with dirt. So keep that in mind." We can circle back to that. Jeff, why don't you hit play on that sucker?
Hey guys, this is Jonathan from Silver Spring, Maryland. I had a question for you about radon pumps and its effect on sump pumps. So you can see here there's a little condensation pump behind our HVAC unit. There's a little pipe where it drains into our sump pump. 20 years ago, the previous owners had this perimeter drain installed and the sump. And it had a perforated basin, but basically the water was just trickling under the foundation of the house and never getting pumped out. So I swapped it out with a solid basin, and now it works great, pumping that condensation out of the house. My question is, though, 3 years ago when we bought the house, the sellers had installed a radon pump because it tested very high for radon, like all the houses around here do. And one of the things that the installer did is seal up all the cracks and gaps in the slab. And some of those came from this sump. So you can see they sealed up the entire perimeter with caulk. My question is, do I have to be concerned about like a drain backup or some type of flooding that happens from inside the house? It's not coming from outside. With the water now not being able to go anywhere, because if it hadn't been sealed here, then that water would just get taken care of by the sump. So it's a common problem around here. I'm curious what you guys can tell me. Tell me if I screwed something up. Love the podcast. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.
Jonathan, you probably screwed something up, but... all right, so he said, "I don't mention it in the video, but the basement drain is cracked and clogged with dirt, so I can't route the condensation to it." So his concern is he's got a sump pump pit in his basement. He's got one of the plastic sump pump buckets in there with a lid on it. Mm-hmm. And when they I guess the radon installer used that as his radon access, like they use the perimeter drain as his way of collecting the radon and pumping it out, which is not uncommon.
No.
But in the course of doing that, in order to get a good vacuum under the slab, you need to seal all the little cracks and penetrations. And obviously,
you also don't want that gas to come through the cracks and stuff into the basement.
So this guy caulked the lid down essentially on the... Is that what you read it as? Is the lid sealed, or is it just around the lid?
I think the entire lid and all the penetrations in it are sealed, basically, so there's no communication between the basement air and whatever the soil gases that are.
So Jonathan's question is, well,
what happens if I have a flooded basement?
Right, yeah.
One of the things about the sump is that it gets water out of my basement if I need to.
this. This is what he needs right here.
What is that?
It's basically a little drain valve, a drain with a check valve that will let water into that sump and not let air out.
Where do you get that sucker? Who makes that?
This is made by Dranger, it looks like.
What is the name?
Dranger, Dranger.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, sump model FS2, F series Dranger. But
So
anyway,
he would
it's
drill a hole in the top of his sump basket there,
Yeah.
and then put this check valve. Right?
Yeah,
It's a check valve.
And I don't think the flow rate on it is super high. So if you had like a big flood, it may not be able to handle that. But yeah, it does let water in, and it doesn't let the gas out. So that's
not
a
really,
solution.
I mean, the purpose of this thing is a sump pump is to get the water away from your foundation. It's not to handle a giant flood. As far as I'm concerned, I think technically speaking, I get
Right.
that people have one and they like that it's a backup safety thing, but
Yeah. I mean, this is basically if it makes you feel good, put it in.
I don't have a basement drain, so if I were to have a water pipe rupture, my basement would fill with water, and I think that's just something that happens.
You don't have a sump either?
I don't have a sump either.
Yeah. You have a shop vac
I have a shop vac.
and a young son who is ready to man it.
And I think a lot of homes with foundations don't have basement drains, although everyone should, and it would be great to have. But the reality is, with this depending on the slope of the site or whatever, it's not going to go anywhere anyway. So,
And sometimes that drain is the place where it comes up.
yes, exactly.
Depending on the site.
Yeah, if the water table rises, your French drain or whatever is going to pump into your basement. So.
So that's cool. I didn't know that thing existed, Matt. That seems like a great solution. The other option is you can, maybe your radon. I don't know. Is there a way that you can leave that open and with a radon fan installed? It's just sort of a trade-off. Like you're still getting enough suction, enough radon's going out that you don't have to worry about the small leakage that you're going to get through a sump basin.
You'd have to make sure that was indeed the case, that it was sufficiently depressurized under the slab. And I think the radon pipes often have a manometer on their side to tell you if they're depressurizing the area.
It would be pretty easy to just, I wonder if you could do the reverse of what some of those HVAC contractors do with like bath fans, like just take a piece of toilet paper and just kind of hold it above the holes in the sump pump and see if it's sucking downward.
Yeah.
You want negative pressure, just like a very slight negative pressure.
Right.
So it's not coming into the house, it's going out.
Yeah. But also if you unseal that thing, it's probably going to be easier for the radon pump to pull air
From the
out
house.
of the basement than it is, through the soil, essentially. So it may,
Right.
deteriorate
So
your
that's
ability
the
to
balance.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's, if that's a concern. I don't have radon system in my house, and I'm afraid to check if I need it.
Yeah. We had a radon test when we bought our house. It wasn't an issue, but we do have a sump and a perimeter drain interior because there were water problems in the house before we bought it. So,
How much does that little sucker cost there, that little Dranger?
I can't remember. It was
Is there any
well under $100.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility that the radon fan would pull that check valve open? You might want to talk to them if
It's such a low pressure fan.
Yeah.
I'd want to ask that company if that was a
I would hope
risk.
that if they designed this thing to do that job, that was figured out. But
I think oftentimes those things are for smells because sump baskets often stink, right? And you don't want that in your basement, so you seal it up, but you do want the ability for water to drain through it if it's necessary.
hold on, I got to look it up now. What's it called? A Dranger what?
What do they call this one? The sump model F-S2.
Dranger FS2. That's what you want when you're getting a Dranger.
It's got the best name ever.
Yeah. Guess what? Internet's down. Let's keep moving.
All right.
That's another good question.
Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. I knew you were going to love this one, Patrick. This is from Colin. Hello, guys. First off, love the show. Appreciate all the good information. My wife and I are planning to build a new home for ourselves in the foothills outside of Denver. We're planning to install radiant floor heat and currently debating whether to install a high-efficiency combination boiler or a standard atmospherically vented boiler. I like the idea of a high-efficiency unit, and since we're planning to build a pretty tight house, I also think that a sealed combustion chamber is a safer option. On the other hand, a few local mechanical contractors have told me that the lifespan on a high-efficiency unit is only 10 to 15 years versus 30-plus years for a standard unit. Let's see. Do we need a little more information about the house? I'm skimming through to see if this is relevant. Natural gas, 8,000 above sea level. Anyway, what are your impressions of the reliability of high-efficiency boilers? Given the lifespan, costs of both units, which would you prefer? If you thought Patrick wasn't going to have a strong opinion on this, you were wrong. Patrick is a geek when it comes to mechanical stuff.
I like simple stuff. And I think having a boiler that you can get replacement parts at any number of your local suppliers is a very valuable thing. If you have something exotic, super efficiency, it's very difficult to get replacement parts oftentimes, or even find someone to service it. So,
well, I mean, but these are not uncommon. I mean, if it's a pretty standard offering, if you go to replace your furnace, they're going to say, what efficiency do you want? And you can get a 97% furnace from really big makers. So is that really a concern to be able to find parts?
It's just a way more complicated thing.
That's true.
And the circuitry is brand specific oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you need a circuit board, and those do fail, do you want to wait a week for it to come from somewhere in outside of your local area? It's not really an option oftentimes, right?
But he's got a tight house. So are you concerned about the atmospheric ventilation? I mean,
So I think there's a number of questions in this question.
Of course.
One is, do you go with an 80% conventionally atmospherically vented flue,
which just means that it's drawing air from the room or from a pipe outside in order to fuel combustion, right?
Right. And the trade-off is that you're not extracting as much heat from those flue gases that you would with a condensing unit. And the condensing unit is removing so much heat from the flue gases that water vapor actually comes out of it. That's the condensing part. So,
right.
And that's corrosive, and that does affect the longevity, or can, of the heat exchangers because it's a corrosive material.
Which, by the way, is why you have plastic pipes usually coming from these things going out the wall, because it's corrosive. What about did you know the thing about the lifespan?
I have heard HVAC and plumbing techs talk about 90-plus furnaces and boilers having shorter lifespans, yes.
And it's because of the corrosion thing. That's what your estimation is?
I don't know.
I don't know, but I'm just kind of guessing at that.
It almost seems like just the complexity of those devices is so much higher than a conventional boiler. There's so much more to go wrong. I mean, you see like videos of these things being taken apart, and it's not like the heat exchanger and everything else looks like it's in perfect shape. And it's like, just looking at it, in a lot of these videos, they're not like able to diagnose exactly what went wrong, what killed this thing. But
right,
it wasn't, the sort of usual suspects, I guess, that you would assume that it would be.
Right. Same thing that happened to auto mechanics. They had to become computer technicians rather than,
And I think that's a fundamental problem here. Most HVAC systems are oversized, which also results in short cycling, right? So the unit doesn't have enough time to get warm enough to do a good job getting rid of the corrosive flue gases, right? So it runs for a little bit, shuts off, doesn't really get hot. And I think all these things contribute to their shorter lifespan.
Yeah.
If they do have a shorter lifespan. I don't think it necessarily have to, but it seems alarmingly common.
From the stats that I read, I was able to dig up some studies that have been done, and it does sound like 10 to 15 years is a fair range. I mean, some, I'm sure that some go longer. I'm not saying that they don't, but it seems like that's common.
So the other question here is, like, can you have an atmospherically vented appliance in a tight home? And that's probably a greater concern in my mind. Saving a few bucks on your heating bill by buying a more efficient heating plant seems like it's going to take. It's not a given that you'll get that money back, right?
Right.
Because the unit's going to cost more.
Well, typically, I think it's $2,000 to $3,000 more is what the round numbers that I've been hearing are.
So that buys a lot of heating fuel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if the thing's going to die in 10 or 15 years. You might not get to the point where you're paying, and we can look at those numbers in a minute, but...
So the question is, can you vent an atmospherically vented appliance? And, The answer is you don't have to, right? There are add-on vent kits that allow you to do through-wall venting that's power-assisted. These devices have a little fan motor that goes in the flue pipe, and they get the gases out of the house without relying on the chimney, which relies on stack effect to make the gases leave the house. They're hotter than air, so they move out the chimney.
Right. If you want to go sideways, you need a fan.
If you want to go sideways, you need a fan. These take care of that problem. Inside the device is a pressure switch that tells the gas valve that it's okay to open. The flue system is working. There's a negative pressure, and that ensures that you're not filling your house with carbon monoxide. Should you turn on your range hood or run your dryer, some of these things in tight homes can be enough to overcome the natural buoyancy of heated flue gases that would ordinarily go out the chimney, so now they're sucked back into the house, and it is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, the tighter you go, the more at risk you are of your bath fan or your range hood fan sucking bad gases back down into your living space. I did one basement one time, and I don't remember what the efficiency of the furnace was, but it was drawing its combustion air from the basement. Mm-hmm. So when we finished the basement and put it in a closet, we needed to provide some means of it getting air. And sometimes, you see people do those the louvered doors so they can still draw air. Yeah. I don't remember why in this case we had to provide makeup air, but we did, and we had to provide it from the outside. And we didn't. The way we did it there was two PVC pipes, one high and one low. So it was two going out through
the band joist,
band joist, right? And so one of the pipes just goes straight and ends around the ceiling of the basement. The other one goes in and drops down and ends, a couple of inches above the floor. And I can't remember. I'm sure there was some details to it that I'm forgetting of, like, what's there a trap in there or a pitch and all that stuff and what size the pipes were. But the idea being that it would draw air from the outside to fuel combustion and then push it back out. I mean, the concern being, well, do I want combustion air? Like, if the furnace is running, it's cold outside, or the boiler is running, it's cold outside. So do I want freezing cold air coming into the house to fuel an appliance that's job is to create heat? So it's a little bit of a trade-off for sure. Back then I was not really energy minded. I was just, the inspector told me I needed to do this, and
and it's for the reasons we just talked about, right?
I didn't know I had to do this, and now I have to pay for it, and I didn't care too much about efficiency. Yeah. But that's a different option. So I suppose there's workarounds.
Most modern heating plants have provisions for outside combustion air. So they have a kit that adapts to the oil burner or comes into the furnace housing for gas, mm-hmm. and allows you to pipe it to the outside, so you're getting your combustion air from the outside.
Right.
And it's not pulling it from the living space.
Right. So if you're going to finish your basement, that's an important consideration to keep in mind. Or if you have a slab and your thing is in a closet or whatever it is.
So the one product I was talking about, the venting, Tjurland is the manufacturer, and you should probably go on their website and see if that'll be a solution.
And they're called power vents, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I looked at putting one of those on my furnace, and it can't be. It's not compatible with my furnace. Mm-hmm.
Is there? I mean, I don't know what his heat demands are going to be, but with a boiler, are you going to be? Is it possible? I mean, a lot of boilers just seem like they're overkill for a really tight house.
I think in general, most furnaces and boilers are twice as big as they need to be.
Yeah. Do these combi boilers? Can they be downsized? I mean, are there smaller options for I guess a small house or a tight house like this?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that I'm guessing yes, but I don't. I mean, I if the internet worked here, I could probably do a quick little consult Dr. Google on that. But
I know our friends over at GBA would say that low load homes are not ideally suited to radiant floors specifically because they have very slow response times and are generally just too many BTUs for a low load house, a tight house. So
right, it takes so long to fiddle with radiant heat. Like if you get hot and you turn it down, you might as well go see a movie before that thing's going to actually change temperature. Yeah, it's too late.
I mean, maybe the guy just goes for a ductless mini split instead. Then he gets some cooling too. It's not like Denver
especially if it's
area
tight.
Doesn't get hot.
Yeah, we didn't really touch much on this whole payback.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm sure that most of this discussion comes down to, I mean, yes, energy savings for sure, tight house, I don't want to waste my money. But what about the whole conundrum of, you know, it costs more to buy this high efficiency, but it's going to save me money on my bill. So is it worth it? And so I plugged in the numbers from my house in round numbers, just in this online calculator. This is for Connecticut, where we live. And my furnace is, I think, 80 or 85. And I spend around $1,000 per year in heating.
On gas?
On gas, yep. And so I plugged in, you know, a 97% efficiency. Like, what if I upgrade to this thing? And what is the cost difference? And I forget what I put in. I think it was $2,000 or $4,000. And then ran the numbers with this little calculator in it. And so it processes the whole thing and gives you which is what you guys are seeing on the screen, and you guys can see it at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. It essentially shows you, you know, the year breakdown, you know, what it would have cost you to be running your old furnace or boiler, what it would cost you to run the new one, the accumulated savings, and then the last column is your gain or loss. And it looks like, if I'm reading this chart right, after 24 years of running, well, let's say the new one lasts 15 years. Let's say I switch. So at 15 years, I would have spent $15,000 on heating in my old one at $1,000 a year. With the new one, I would have spent $12,000 and change. So the savings would be $2,600. So I'm still in the hole financially by the time that high efficiency unit.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I didn't change anything else in this calculator. So if you have a tight house, I mean, my house is old and it's leaky. If let's say I switched to this furnace and I did a massive insulation upgrade, I'm guessing these numbers are going to get better, although then there's also insulation payback numbers mixed in there. Sure. So, I mean, are you guys reading this the same way I am? It's sort of hard to justify.
Yeah, especially if you're going to have to replace that unit after 10 to 15 years. Then
you will not make your money back.
Yeah, you won't make your money back ever. You're just going to keep incurring costs.
Yeah. Even if you were able to get that thing to run to 24 years, which is the end of this chart, you're still $3,293 in the hole. You still have not broken even. So,
to further muddy the waters,
I think they're going to take away my like efficiency card for shining the light on this.
Well, I mean, if there's tax credits or something involved,
that makes a huge difference.
It could sway the balance, and I know that's an incentive in a lot of places, and it may be the case, you know, near Boulder, which is probably where this guy's going.
This also does not factor in inflation, interest, changing in utility prices. Like if you know they're going to get more and more expensive, then this is going to get better.
That could make a huge difference. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is very simplified, but and the electricity used by the furnace and all of that is also not considered.
I was just going to bring that up. You might be better off buying a cheaper furnace and make sure that it has an ECM blower instead of because my house, for example, in the heating season, I spend $100 on electricity running the furnace.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's so ECM is just, what is it, electrically commutated motor or something, and that just means that it's more efficient to run, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's modulating. It doesn't mean that it has essentially the equivalent of a hydrostatic transmission.
Well, oftentimes the ECM blowers will maintain airflow on their own based on static losses. But the problem there is if you have bad ductwork, they're going to actually be using more electricity because they're going to be trying to deliver this air through this pipe that is too small in essence. So you can actually, by switching to one of these, have your bill go up in some cases if your ductwork is very poorly designed.
And how would you know that ahead of time?
Don't know.
Well, one thing that we didn't mention here, and certainly comfort is hard to put a price on. So a lot of times when you get these higher efficiency units, they come with modulating. Yes. You know, so you can buy a furnace or a boiler as one stage, like single stage or two stage, and that just means that it has two speeds. Like single stage is it's either on or off. Two stage is it has high and low and off. And then there's modulating, which means that it will adjust the fan speed to like the needed output. And those are a lot quieter.
True.
They're a lot more comfortable because it's not just like it's kicking it on and blasting you with heat and then dropping off again and back on and back off. It's like you're just kind of, it's maintaining this even, comfortable temperature, and that's nice.
Another reason to get the mini split.
Yes, mini splits are also excellent on that. I love mini splits.
There's a lot to like about them.
Yeah, they're not always easy to find a home for on a wall, depending on your house, but they sure are nice.
Yeah.
And they are super convenient to install.
And you can get the like ceiling mounted things.
You can get
that
them
look a little
ducted.
less.
I mean, yeah, whatever. So what's your recommendation at the end of all that?
You asking me?
Oh, yeah.
Get an 80-plus furnace. Get your direct vent kit, either from the manufacturer of it, and sleep at night, and don't worry about it. Spend your splurge money elsewhere.
Matt?
Ductless mini split and
Do you think he's sniffing down the wrong path altogether?
yeah, and then just maybe an on-demand hot water heater if you really want that, and you want the same headache of a combi boiler.
Something else
just go with
expensive and complicated.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be replacing something every 10, 15 years, just maybe go with a regular hot water heater and a ductless mini split.
You could spend a decent amount of money on a high-efficiency water heater, and they don't seem to be as... Maybe I shouldn't say this, but from what I've heard, they don't seem to be as likely to fall apart and break. I mean, it seems like when you spend more for a water heater, you just get better insulation, better standby loss numbers.
You're talking tank type, not...
Tank type, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know about tankless.
I don't either. That's another very expensive, complicated thing.
Those numbers are tough, but...
What I would tell this gentleman is to first really look at his heating loads, right? Because with the hot water system, he might just have too many BTUs for the house he wants to build. So that's the first thing. He's got to figure out his priorities with regard to his envelope, and then do a size to make sure that he's not putting too much heating system in.
Right. I mean, if you took the dollars out of the heating system and put them into insulation, you may get to the same place and you're more comfortable.
Yep.
And the system is smaller, and you can stick it in a closet, or one mini split does the whole house, or whatever it happens to be.
Well, and I think with the in-floor radiant, people sometimes have the idea that like it's going to make the floor feel warm, so they're going to be walking around on like this warm floor, but it doesn't really feel warm. Like it's still like, feels like walking around kind of on a cool, clammy floor if you've got a concrete floor. I don't know what his floor system's going to be, but
yeah.
Especially if he's got a super tight, low load house, right? Because the water temperatures are very low. You're not gonna be able to tell.
Right. All right, we got one more porch attic question. This is from Bill. I'm a skilled DIY. Have tackled many additions, basements, and decks in the past 30 years. We live outside of Austin, Texas, where summer temps reach 100 plus, while our winters, in quotes, are occasionally dip below 32 at night while warming to 60 by noon. Boo hoo. A real tough life, Bill. I think it's 32 out here right now, and it's going to be 150 this afternoon. My question is this: our house is spray foam insulated with a conditioned attic and has a standing seam metal roof. The back porch, which is 12 by 20, is covered by the house roof, forming a small exterior attic space over the open porch. There are soffit vents to the porch attic, but no roof vents. The porch ceiling is tongue and groove cedar. In the summer, the porch roof gets very hot, which heats the porch attic space, which in turn radiates into the open porch area. I'm planning to insulate the porch attic roof deck with R13 fiberglass bats in order to keep the intense roof heat out of the porch attic. I don't want to install a roof vent because cutting and flashing a metal roof is a pain. I don't see a winter condensation problem here because the space below is open to the outdoors, so the porch attic air temp should track the outdoor air temps. What do you think? So he's got a closed roof over a porch, and he's getting uncomfortable radiant heat from the ceiling when he's sitting out there. Texas is hot enough. I don't think we need more heat radiating from the thing that's supposed to keep you cold.
What I found a little confusing about this, so when you're talking about insulation and air sealing issues, you're talking about a change in temperature, right? You want to keep your conditioned indoor air away from your unconditioned outdoor air, right? He has two sets of unconditioned spaces we're talking about, right? I'm at a loss. Like, is there enough delta T change in temperature
Right.
that insulation would actually be effective?
Well,
and I don't know.
So let's say it's 100 degrees outside and the sun is beating down on that porch. I mean, it's going to have to be 150 in that attic or more.
I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
A metal roof, no insulation, no vents. Well, I guess it has soffit vents, but they're going nowhere.
Yeah, that air is going to be
150,
as hot as if it
200,
were not
I don't
vented
know.
at all. Yeah.
So
You think insulation would work between those two spaces?
is this a case for radiant barrier?
That I think I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had a couple thoughts on this because he is talking about insulating essentially the roof deck, and I don't know
From the underside,
from the
right?
underside, and I still think that that space is going to get almost as hot as it would if that were not insulated. I think if you're going to put insulation up
the
there,
ceiling.
I would put it in the ceiling, and that's just my hunch. That may be totally wrong, but
So you're suggesting don't try to keep the attic from getting hot, just keep that hot attic from translating down into your porch.
that would be my hunch. Yeah.
Did he say what kind of roof it was?
Standing.
No, but I
seam.
mean like the shape. I mean, if it's a gabled roof, how about some gable vents, one on either
Yeah.
end of the overhang?
I think the problem there is, and only came up because Martin Holliday, I had asked him a question about this in relation to an article I'm working on. And essentially, by the time the air gets to the top of that roof, even if in a vented situation, the air is just as hot as it would be if there were no vents. So by the time it gets to the top third of that roof, it's hot as heck. So venting almost doesn't even matter, and especially in a climate like this. Martin had pointed me to a presentation. I just pulled this slide out of it, and it just says, warm and humid climates. No one has ever claimed moisture control benefits in venting attics in warm, humid climates. Outside air is more humid than inside, and attic venting will tend to increase rather than decrease moisture levels in the attic. So they're basically saying, like, don't even bother venting in an attic in sort of their climate. And the temperature difference from venting that is really going to be negligible, I think.
So their concern is that outside it's hot and humid outside, and putting vents in is just going to make your attic hot and humid.
Yeah, I mean, you may be introducing more moisture into that attic than if it were not vented at all.
Right.
Is a possibility.
What about radiant barriers? I know we frown
Yeah.
on radiant barriers in a lot of situations, but
In new construction in hot places, it makes a lot of sense, especially if it's the kind that goes right on the sheathing. It's not a big deal. But they're often more expensive than adding additional insulation, which in most places is more effective.
there's no way. I mean, if he's going to open this thing up and he can get a hold of that foil-faced bubble wrap kind of thing, I wonder. I don't know. I don't know what his access to the space is. Could he do this in stages? You know,
That's the thing. I was assuming that he had like a door access from inside the house
Right.
because he's not talking about opening anything up.
but if he's going to open the ceiling to do this, then he's going to want to do it once and be done.
Right.
Right.
If he has a door, then I might start with putting up foil-faced bubble wrap on the underside of the roof rafters
Yeah.
and seeing if that helps keep some of the heat out.
I wonder if a thick layer of cellulose on the porch ceiling would perhaps be the most effective way to keep that radiant heat from hitting him.
Certainly be an inexpensive way to
Yeah.
go.
Would you get
But I
rid of
don't-
those vents?
Yeah,
Those
I
soffit
would.
vents in the meantime then?
Because, I mean,
Yeah.
even though you're talking about two unconditioned spaces, like, you need an air barrier, right? You still need to stop that movement of air through that ceiling.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily have to get rid of the vents. You could put some kind of block on
Block
the
them.
inside so you
Yeah.
didn't have to touch the outside of his house.
Right.
But or if you could clean it off well enough on the inside, I guess you could put like a piece of tape across it, like air sealing tape on the inside, cover up the vent. Yeah. These are hard questions today.
That's
Yeah.
a really hard one.
But I tend to sort of side with Matt on this somewhat, that I feel like putting insulation on the roof, in the roof rafters, doesn't quite, because it's going to keep some of the heat from going into the attic space,
Yeah.
but you're still
It's
going
gonna
to get
slow it down.
some.
Yeah.
It's,
You're
you're
still gonna
right.
get
It's
some.
going to slow
Yeah.
it down or reduce it slightly.
Yeah.
But isn't. I wonder what the difference, like what temperature difference. This is interesting too. He didn't say I'm sitting on my porch and it feels like the ceiling's making me hot. He said the ceiling gets very hot. Like the roof deck gets very hot. It's like
And and it sounds like the ceiling maybe then is getting hot, and then the heat is radiating down from that.
That's what my take
But
is.
like, is it causing discomfort, or is it like, hey, I went up there to change a light bulb and noticed that the ceiling is really hot?
Two different things.
You know,
right?
like maybe he needs a ceiling fan to move some air around.
Yeah, that's
and
another thing.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
And they make ceiling fans that are made for outdoor applications like that. They're waterproof, and it would be very helpful, right?
I mean, let the heat come and go, but as long as you feel like you're getting some evaporative cooling on your skin, maybe you won't care.
Yeah.
We aren't often asked about like insulating unconditioned spaces, right? It's a weird thing to me.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all we got for this week. Guys, tune in next week, and we'll have some more questions for you and some more fun. In the meantime, you can check out our website, findhomebuilding.com/podcast. While you're there, sign up for a subscription, sign up for an online membership. We got lots of good things cooking. Follow us on all the social platforms. We'll keep you posted on all the cool things we have rolling out in the near future. And send us questions. FHBpodcast@taunton.com. This is Justin saying goodbye from Matt, Jeff, and Patrick. Keep craft alive and happy building.